Yeah, I'm getting there. All right. Everybody got it on? Okay. Part of the VO behind y'all, I'm sharing my space with my beautiful wife who works from home. This is technically her office. So, can everybody hear me all right? Can I
I
get
can hear
some
you
thumbs
great.
ups? Are we alive? There you go. Okay. We got a live one. All right. So, today is going to be different. I built something custom just for y'all, and it's very exciting for me. Let me go in presentation mode, right? Everybody, we good?
We're
Awesome.
good.
All right, guys. So I named this presentation "Change Your Major: Living for the Ad Life," and this is inspired by one of my like top professors at USF. I did go to USF. Sorry, y'all. Um, I was in advertising. I started in advertising when I was 19. I left after 4 years uh, to go to school for advertising so that I could get back into advertising. So you're talking to somebody who has a problem uh, and a deep passion for this industry. But I wanted to do this because first and foremost, I'm so thankful, Darius, for your kind words. Darius has been present, since 2010. In some way, we've always stayed plugged in, and he asked me to bring truth today, right? Like, yes, showcase studies, yes, do the things that you have to see, and hopefully you can be inspired by. But I want y'all to like get the true take of a true story that I thought I was the only one, and where I'm at today is because I found out through the last decade that I'm not. So, with all that said, let's get into it. All right. Everyone's faces look exactly like I wanted them to be. Guess what? Welcome to advertising, fam. We're cooking. Yeah, welcome to advertising. Listen, advertising can be ruthless. Advertising can be challenging. Advertising is one of the few places where people literally are trained to ignore your work. And advertising is the only industry where you literally have to learn how to kill your own babies, aka your ideas. Okay? So so that's what's up. So I'm assuming that the next feeling that everyone's having in the room, I'm seeing everyone's faces, is why the hell have you been doing this for 15 years, man? Like, why? Like, what's wrong with you, right? And the answer is like legitimately like we masochists. It's plain and simple. In advertising, we're masochists. And the reason that we're masochists is because there's absolutely nothing in the world more satisfying than bringing ideas to the world, bringing ideas to life. I promise you, there's nothing more satisfying. And what becomes addictive is when your work actually changes culture and you see a shift in behavior and a shift in culture itself. So, with all that said, let's get to work today. So, like I said, I built this as a custom experience for y'all. UCF, it really is deep inside of my heart. I in high school I went there as the only place that I applied to, was the only place I wanted to be, and this means a lot to me. For me, like being in front of you right now, it's a really big treat, and I'm hoping that you get something out of this journey that I'm about to share with you. So I broke this down in three parts. For the love of the ad, dues can break you, and that's just gonna get real. And then purpose on self love, which is kind of like where I'm at today, and I'll show you some things that are happening that I would love for you to know about and to potentially get involved in. So for the love of the ad, um, excuse me. Who's this guy, right? So Darius told you a little bit about me. I am a Puerto Rico native, born and raised in the island. Um, I began uh, I began at a young age as a performer, as a dancer, I was a musician, kind of never ended. I am a USF graduate, I know. I am a creative director, copywriter, self-titled creative strategist, and yes, my biggest job is that of father and husband. So here's the thing that happened to me. So when I was 16 years old, I was a kid in a band, right? We managed to cut some demos and I had some MP3s, and we had the internet, right? So back then, what happened was that all I needed to do, my whole job back then was I needed to earn people's trust with a keyboard. That was my whole, like my whole existence was earning people's trust with a keyboard, right? And how did I do that? I was on AIM, I was on LiveJournal, I was on MySpace, mp3.com, because, right, like that was an early, that was an early internet, but that was early social media two-way communication. And all you knew back then was like, yo, the internet is sketchy as fuck, right? Like that's the whole like that was the whole mindset that people had was like it's mad sketch. um but what also happened during this time is that I actually discovered marketing in high school, and I joined DECA and I started competing. And then I found myself being a street team leader. So all of a sudden, I'm like, I'm doing this professionally. Actually, it was an Orlando band that I started doing it professionally. And the way that I was getting paid was with tickets. So I was in the Hard Rock, once a quarter, as a street team leader for the I-4 corridor, and I was like taking care of like communities online and LiveJournal from Tampa to Orlando. So that's kind of like how it kind of started. But with all that even happening, what most people don't realize, what most people don't understand, is the things that I have failed at, right? The things that didn't work out, the band that didn't work out, the two studios that we built and didn't go anywhere, the label that flopped, out the gate, the first agency that no one knows existed, right? And what happened in here is that this entrepreneurial spirit was woken, right? Like 16, 17 years old. Like I didn't know that it was an entrepreneurial spirit, but I know now that that's what it was. Um, but what I didn't know back then, it was taking a lesson out of every L that I took, right? Like every single time that quote unquote something failed, like I understood that, like, listen, you're just getting started, like you're learning, right? And from those early experiences, fail smarter, one of my core beliefs, was kind of born of like, now like I am out there, I'm trying to fail, right? Like I just got to do it smarter because I need to learn quicker and adapt faster, right? um so so yeah, I got him too, son. So so excuse me. So at 19, like I said before, I end up, working for a big ass corporation known as Publix. Was just an entry, proofreader, technical writer, translator. But I was right in a gigantic company, and the bug kind of like bit me. And after 4 years of working there, having to work two, three jobs at the same time, I decided that I needed to go back to school, right? Thanks to an early mentor who was a USF graduate, and she was like, "You need to get your degree, right? Like you need to do this." And in doing this, I ended up in Maine, right? I ended up in San Francisco for a whole summer working for a gigantic agency, McCann San Francisco. They had HP, they had just lost Microsoft. But what was the biggest part of that was when all of us get back to New York, I get to meet 200 plus people who had the same bug, who looked like me, right? Like all of a sudden, I was in the space of like this beautiful, like, mecca that is New York. I meet this man that you're seeing right there with the baby face. Um, and that's when the bug really, really hit me. And what I had no idea was just how intense of a ride this was going to actually end up being. So that leads me to part two. This part, what I want to do for y'all is I do want to show some of the work that I've done in hopes that you can get, learn something, find inspiration yourself. Um, but I want y'all to kind of know what happens in the industry. And for me, it's been this really kind of wild movie type of experience where like the best the work was, like the most up my life was, right? Like, and that unfortunately happens a lot, right? So finding your balance now, if you're going into this industry, understanding balance now, my hope is that you're going to take that and make it mean something before, 5, 7, 10 years into it. So um why is Zoom like that? So um yeah, so I graduate, I moved to South Florida. I'm in this agency working 60, 70, sometimes 80 hours when we're pitching, making $30,000 a year. South Florida. So moral of that story is I couldn't pay my bills. Okay. Couldn't pay my bills, living like crazy, was not seeing my wife, not seeing my kids grow up, and paying dues, right? Like I had to pay my dues. I had to get a book. I had to build real work. I had to learn how to sell to a client as a junior copywriter. And and after 15 months of that, I realized like you're not gonna make it. Like you're not gonna make it alive out of this. Um, so I was able to move into Zumba. That was the first time that I went from traditional agency into an in-house agency where I got to do one of my favorite campaigns I've ever done. This is back from 2014. And this campaign, it's still like untouched as is today. They keep refining and tweaking, but the big idea, the approach, the creative system that was developed back then, it's still very much happening. Um, and it was an incredible, fully integrated campaign. Um, I don't know if you all have talked about omnichannel yet, but omnichannel is kind of like the modern hyper integration, personalization, up front, where every single touch point it's accounted for, considered, where you're taking people through journeys and funnels, on a constant basis. You're basically what I call creating in time, right? You're not creating just in space. You're not doing ads just in space. You're actually creating in time. And this campaign did that, right? Like from the very first email launch to social activation. We were doing influencer marketing before influencer marketing had a fucking name. Um, we were doing digital activations, social banners, um, and then that was leading up into the event itself. Then you go into the event, and then you get to paint this idea, and literally. So I know they're kind of touched to Orlando, so this is in the OCCC up in Orlando. We take over the whole building. We take over the Hyatt behind it. We take over the Hilton. So now you're talking about an idea that is literally now an environment and a brand and a message that is living and breathing, and people just they are inside of your system, right? They are inside of a universe that you painted and you kind of ideated. Um, Even back then, we knew that everything was going to be about that two-way communication, about that engagement, about everything that happens now can be shared, should be amplified, but also understood branded communities. If you don't know what a brand community is, you more than likely live in one or 10 of them, and you just don't know the name yet. So brand communities, empowering people, give them the brand, give them the brand is just Lego pieces, and you let them run with it, right? Like that's the kind of thing that we were doing back in 2014. And now brands are realizing shit, like we have to do this, like we're behind. Um, so yeah, man, like it was incredible to be able to think about something at that scale and build essentially a universe. Um, so what I wanted to do is just share this video with y'all. Let me see. It works. If it doesn't work, Darius, let me know, all right?
You're good.
There's a lot of anxiety, whenever you're doing something new, there's a lot of anxiety about what's the response going to be. I think this opens up a whole, world of possibility. My name is Wayne Miller.
I'm Evan Wiggle.
My name is Alex Santiago.
My name is Urban Villarrieta. Video in itself is an engaging tool. Personalization is an engaging tool. And we kind of bring those together. It's really exciting.
I mean, Ruckus was there along the way to kind of guide us.
So you're seeing people's video pop up on Instagram or Facebook. That was a really cool feeling, that people connected with our marketing initiative so closely that they wanted to share it to their social network.
It was really exciting to start seeing automatic reaction. And we started seeing people like, wow, they're building collages. It was really wild to see that all like happening within literally like 10 minutes of that email going out. It was really cool. I think that one, I think for all of us here was, that's awesome.
Seeing the reactions of the people that when they saw their name on the stage they go to every year on the badge, and then picturing themselves there was really cool.
All right. Did that play okay? You all heard it fine? Yeah, so that was the first thing that we did, the first activation out of that thing. And in my life, I've yet to have this, and I think it's like the biggest compliment. Anytime that you do anything digital, like you're usually doing A/B testing, right? One, because you have to have a control, but also because this shit's expensive, right? Like it's not easy to do this kind of thing. So we were able to do this test only in the United States. It was 80% of the United States audiences, and the audience was Zumba instructors who come to Orlando for this convention. And then the rest of the world didn't get it, and people were pissed. Like people were 100% pissed off because they didn't get their custom video. Like I've never in my life, experienced something like that. But that's when we knew that something special had happened, and then we actually pivoted all of our activations to put them into place, right? So all of a sudden, everything at the convention was for them to take these pieces of advertising, and the whole like walking billboards like became truly walking billboards. And then we introduced this kind of like custom but templated ads where the imagination, the front layer, it's the brand, as is, but then you just put your photography, and then the brand, you're always on brand identity. So this was an incredible thing. But as incredible as that was, my third kid was coming, and I'm still living in South Florida, and I couldn't afford shit. Bottom line. So I did one of the biggest mistakes that people in the ad industry do. I followed the money. I started looking out after 2 years. I started looking everywhere. I followed the title and I followed the money. And I got the money, but ended up in an insanely toxic place. And 6 months into the experience, then I didn't have any money because I was let go for the first time in my whole career. It was toxic. It made me toxic. I became someone I did not like, and no one liked me, including myself. So that's where I venture off. I started freelancing, did gigs here and there. And my wife was kind of like, listen, I want to go back home. Like, I want to go back to Lakeland. Our house is there. It's more affordable. And I did this whole thing where I was like, the only way that I'm going to go back home is if Publix calls me back, because they were never going to call me back. Like that was, and lo and behold, I ended up replacing my mentor, that first original mentor. She retired and I became, but the whole point of me coming back up, and the reason that was very exciting, was because obviously Publix is an IDO company, but they're not, right? Like they're conventional, they are, conservative. And I came up to build a digital team. That was the whole point, was to build a digital team. So it's a senior copywriter. I was overseeing all the writings, anything on the screen at Publix, I was doing it, right? Whether it's the app, in-store, now they're like their version of Prime, which is what you're seeing right here. And I spent 3.5 years. I became a creative director. I built a team of 8. And to be honest with you all, like, this is an incredible campaign. It literally just won like every goal there was to win on the Addies a couple of weeks ago here in town. but it put me in a position where now I'm behind the scenes, kind of like seeing a world that I wasn't really connecting and jiving with. So the campaign was phenomenal, right? Again, omni-channel, acquisition, onboarding, engagement, personalization led. Everything was a creative system, illustration, custom illustrations, video work. And it was, again, an ecosystem. This is essentially now the prime of Publix, right? Without having to pay for it. You now have an account, everything lives in one place. The original tag was one place for everything you love. And it was this beautiful, playful, experience, motion first, because obviously you need to have motion in social media. So this is literally like probably my most incredible, campaign that I'll never get credit for, because the dues that I had to pay here was with my health, unfortunately. And it got tough, because one of the craziest ideas, biggest ideas that I've ever pulled off, our team pulled off, was this. And I don't know if anybody has seen this, but we literally pitched an 8-hour Facebook Live cooking show. And not only do we had an 8-hour live cooking show, we actually let the consumers, right, the customers, the fans on Facebook vote on key ingredients, because we were cooking the same thing in 1,000 stores across the whole Southeast. So you had this incredible ecosystem of online web influence kind of happening, everything streamed live, affecting 1,000 stores all at the same time. Again, one of the boldest, most intense things that I've ever done. What most people don't know that you know now, it's that I was in the hospital the night before this happened, because I thought I was having a heart attack. And at 1 a.m, I drove myself to the hospital because I literally thought I was dying. And that 4 a.m, I was sent home, and I was told that I have had a panic attack. And panic attack, I know enough about mental health that I was like, something here is not right. I've struggled with depression before. I've struggled with mental health issues before. So the most incredible piece of ideation and strategy that I've ever developed exposed this incredible, intense, kind of like bad place that I was in. So I'm gonna let this one rip. This one is really fun.
Hello there and welcome. 53% of you, that's more than half of you, want the red pot. So there we go. We get rid of the silver pot. We get rid of the blue pot. Tommy, you're going to be interested in this. He wants to know, is that Ed Sheeran?
No. So what we got here is the exact same thing you've got going on in the studio, guys.
Do you know what time it is? Carlos Garcia just said, Tommy, get your onions. He wants Tommy back
More
for
juggling.
more juggling.
All right.
Wow.
Hey, Emil Lagasse here for the Publix Apron Slow and Low Chili.
So do you have a girlfriend, Plato? Oh.
No.
I have a gift for you, Chef Patrick, because I think that you shine. The winner is the kidney bean. You love a good classic, don't you?
Andy Steely writes, hey, Chef Patrick, where's your gold jacket? That's a good question.
The viewers have spoken.
Andy, how do you like me now?
Tommy is what?
Awesome!
Yeah! Our chili is done!
So tell me about your favorite kind of chili. Here's one.
Our aim here is to bring your family back to the table. And we invite you too to gather your loved ones around the table and to share a meal together. That's what Publix Aprons is all about.
So again, massive, right? Facebook Live in store happening all at the same time. Gigantic omni-channel activation, integration across all channels, heavy PR, um, both internally and externally. Um, you know, like ads everywhere. Um, what was really crazy about this, when I said at the very beginning, we didn't just create culture in doing this like gigantic idea, like really took Publix from like, we didn't have a social media presence when I got there. Now we're doing like groundbreaking activations. Um, we literally change how the internal process and collaboration in the organization between buying and marketing. We literally paved the way for a complete new way to collaborate internally. So when you're doing, when you affect culture, like it's not just like you're affecting people, it's the space that you're in, as well as the people out there. So this one for me, it was huge. Um, I'm not going to get into why I left Publix. That would be a private conversation at a later time. Um, I just was not comfortable in my own skin. I'll keep it at that. Little behind the scenes love from back in that day. So then what ends up happening is I started kind of venture off on my own. I knew that I wasn't comfortable in my skin, and social mosaic communication had been my side hustle, just kind of like freelancing front, to be honest with you. And this, believe it or not, was for a UCF student. It was a couple, a black couple from South Florida who had this business idea, and my partner and I, did this project for them. And he's still trying to get it off the ground. They're very, very young, so like securing funding that young is really hard, but they're moving, and I'm really excited. This is one of like the greatest brands that we probably have built. And I cannot wait until the world sees it. You're getting to get a little sneak peek here of this beautiful, my wood canvas work. So with that, we're on the tail end of things, purpose and self-love. And this is really more of a take and a view of where I am today, decisions that I've made and what I'm trying to accomplish. And hopefully y'all can be some part of, some of these areas. Darius was so grateful. I have been fundamentally lucky in my career, but I'm lucky in my deals, my uncle's definition of lucky, which is that luck has to find you working. And if you want to take anything with you, like that's the piece in this industry, like you do have to work, right? You just got to make sure that you know where your breaking points are, and you know what balance means for you, and what it looks like for you. But I have been lucky. I've worked for Zumba, I worked for Publix, for NASCAR, for the Florida Panthers. I just wrapped up a 2-day virtual festival for 7,000 Facebookers. Like that was like next level. I like every project that I have now, it's like nothing in comparison to what we just finished. Cannot show any of that work, of course. And then I am the down south lead for 100 Roses from Concrete, which kind of is where my life has shifting, and my purpose of inspiring wisdom through education has taken me, and it's taken me right now. So last summer, after another failed experiment with an agency, I found myself last June, 5 days before my birthday, out of commission. And I was like, you know what? I'm done. I have Social Mosaic. I have this idea. I have this process. I have this passion. I have the case studies. I don't have an LLC. So I took a 10-year-old idea and moniker, and I made it official. So Social Mosaic Communications was officially an LLC in June of last year. And I just went to town. And I started just 15 years of experience. I just started making the content and giving it away, right? I was just like, listen, it's now or never, right? Like this is my book. My book is going to be a stream, on all platforms of people to see the world how I see the world, especially in this industry. I ended up helping one of my close friends became my first official paying client in the LLC. I'm so like proud to say this just won 8 freaking Addies here in town. So I got to spank some big guns here in town. So this little campaign, it's going to districts. I'm really stoked about it. I like love this thing. It's a realtor company. Who would have thought that you can have a realtor company look like this? Really, really exciting about this. And again, same thing, right? Like it's all about moving culture and big ideas, but then instead of activations and campaigns, it's really more about systems and branding systems up front that is going to kind of like set you up for modern marketing. So this video might be sketchy. I do want to talk about 100 Roses today. If you're looking for an internship-like experience this summer, we kind of call it an internship because it's not a paying internship. In New York, you cannot say the word internship. But what we essentially did was we built in virtual agency guided and directed by the 100 Roses from Concrete, which is a collection of men and women of color in the industry. And to be honest with you, very high places, right? Like it's a collection of directors, chief, this C-suite, all the way down to to specialists who just want to see action, right? Like we've been sitting with these organizations talking about diversity and inclusion, and they were not doing shit. So last year when COVID happened, we started hearing like all of these internships were getting canceled, and guess who was getting the hit? People of color. Because unfortunately, if you haven't noticed, if you look at the data, like we kind of get that last piece of the pie. Like it's unfortunate, but it's the reality that we're in. And we were like, we'll be damned if that's the case. So these are the words of 55 beautiful, young, up and coming students who did the program with us. Again, if it's sketchy, I'm gonna pass, but I want you all to hear a little bit about what they have to say.
In the spring of 2020, advertising agencies across the country shut down their summer internships due to COVID-19, leaving thousands of up-and-coming advertising professionals without valuable access and opportunity to further their careers. Steps in 100 Roses from Concrete with the Growth Initiative, the Ad Club of New York, and Save the Internship of New York, and made magic for a lot of aspiring advertising professionals. This is how they describe their experience in one word.
If I could describe growth in one word, it would be encouraging.
Influential.
Innovative.
Rewarding.
Stirring.
Motivating.
I graduated this year, and it's already hard enough trying to find a job in an industry that's kind of difficult to get into.
Growth gave us an opportunity to collaborate, an opportunity to create, an opportunity to lead a project from beginning to end, and an opportunity to grow.
I learned so much from a diverse group of industry professionals.
All these different type of people in the industry who are in a place that you aspire to be one day.
My mentor was amazing. We also had mentors.
All right, it has been a little sketchy, but essentially these students went from what am I going to do? A lot of them were just like you, right? Like they're at the end of you need that last internship that gets you in the door. And we were like, we're not going to let them fail. You know what I mean? And then what happened is we were like, not only we're not going to let them fail, but we're not going to let them burn out in 5 years like most Black and brown creatives and leave the industry. We're going to set them up now with the real truth of what this industry looks like for people like us and make them successful, because we want them to be the future leaders, not just like this open rotating door that this industry is so well known for.
In the spring of 2020.
So shameless plug, y'all. We're checking applications. We have them open up until April, I believe. If you have any questions or whatever, obviously I'll give you all my information. But you don't have to be a person of color. And the reason that we did that is because we needed to be, right? We needed to take that next step of, we want to give opportunities to young folks coming in, but yes, we are an organization that is, primarily a diversity, equity, inclusion, what I like to call belonging organization. So if you're interested, if you have questions, we can talk about it. But so anyway, so that's a huge part. I am the down south lead. What that means is that I'm the point of contact. If there's any ideas, if there's anything that schools that that you want to have us come through and help out, we're here for you. So I'm on the tail end, right? So I told you all, like, I'm all about inspiring wisdom through education. That's my own personal kind of like purpose, right? Like that's where my journey is. That's where my purpose lies. So I started doing all of these lessons, and I started doing my own version of what my book looks like. And I go anywhere from diversity to just technique to advice to business plans, building brand books. I just made this, stop asking for logos, like, blew up. And it's hilarious because like everyone who's in the industry understands what that means, but like most people, regular people, business people don't get it. So I try to do it in a very empathetic way of like, stop asking for logos. But then if you see the sequence and you see it's an actual 5-step lesson of like what you should be doing. And I'm not the only person doing it. I'm just doing it how I know how to do it, right? Like that's something that you can't forget. Like we're all doing advertising in some way. We're all writing, we're all strategizing, but no one can replace you. Like only you can be you. Like I'm gonna talk to only you can be you, right? Like that might sound cliche as hell, but that's the truth, right? Like that's what makes you special. And then how you learn to pivot and how you learn to deal with what life throws at you, whether it's work or personal, ends up being where your ideas and your critical thinking comes from. So the last thing I'm going to close out is I have been very open and I'm vulnerable as hell. I had to learn to be vulnerable. And I speak a lot about mental health. I have now been part of 2 campaigns with Made of Millions. The actual CEO is an artist from Orlando who opened an agency. I told you, this is like custom. This guy was actually my friend when I was street team leader back in the day. And like 8 years later, I found out that he opened an agency in New York and he was in advertising. And then he became a mental health advocate and created Made of Millions. And if you're not following them, please, like, this is real. Make sure that you check them out. I'm not doing this for show. Like I'm vulnerable. I'm open about my struggles. I speak about what I've been through, just because I don't want other people to feel like they have to like scrape their face to be able to like get through these things. So this is a huge, huge part of who I am and what I speak about and what drives me. With that said, we're at the end. I think I'm a little bit long, but thank you. Thank you all so much for having me. I don't know if we have time. We have questions or anything, but thank you all.
We have time for questions. And I like what you did here. While the questions, what happens is usually the students throw a ton of questions in the chat and then I try to moderate. And so I'll ask you those in a second and we have a little bit of time. But what I like about what you're saying here, one of the reasons that I asked you to do a little something like this is because I think we forget. I think sometimes it's easy to forget people's reality. And people's reality right now is that you're bored in the house and you're in the house bored, right? You're stuck, and the outlets that you would normally have, they're restricted. And you may have a better unit than others in terms of outlets or what have you. But there are a lot of my students that are kind of stuck in the house, stuck at looking at screens all day. And so what I do think is important is some of the things that you touched on in terms of finding your balance and not giving up so much of yourself and remembering yourself, especially during right now. And I think that that's important. And I also think what you touched on is very true about the industry. I'm looking at Sarah Kate because I know you asked that question like in the beginning of the semester. You know, is the industry mean, right? And so there is some meanness to it. It's not all bad. You still do amazing work. I think Alex has had an amazing career thus far, and it's only just still going. And I'm glad you did your own thing. Doing your own thing is my preferred. But what I do think is important is that sometimes we do this thing where we go, I have to pay my dues, and that starts justifying every other decision we look to make. It justifies, you know, relationships not doing great. It justifies personal achievement. It justifies all these things because you're under this guise that like you got to pay your dues. And I think that's been a problem with the industry for a very long time, and adjacent industries as well. And it's like this like reminder of giving yourself, you know, putting yourself before your industry, before all of these things, and reminding yourself that, hey, when I am myself, when I'm able to find that balance, that I can create better work. I'm not blocked up. You know, if I don't justify things by saying I got to pay my dues all the time, then I can start to really create. But it's a struggle to get there. And I like that you told that story. All right, let me get to the questions.
Let me well, you're looking at the questions. Let me, if you don't mind, let me speak on that real quick. So so this industry is very hard to get into, right? I don't know if you all know that already. It's very hard to get into. And the reason for that is because it's 100% like, I'm about to drop a nugget for you, but like it's very much like an elitist industry, right? Like it's a very, very tight knit industry. And what has happened is, especially since the 70s, the revolution, the Ogilvy, the Burma, like all the DDBs happened, you essentially have this fetishism of getting treated like shit, right? Like somehow the way that you do it, that like you pay your dues is like getting treated like shit. And so then you have to treat people like shit. And what's happening now is that there is this whole school going like that is completely unnecessary, right? Like we can do better, we can do big, we can move things forward without being a total piece of shit, right? Like it's in that a lot of the friction that's happening is going down. Now, I learned this last year and it blew my mind because I never knew why the industry was so elitist, and like an OGer painted this picture and it just blew my damn mind because you have, right? So you have Washington makes laws, right? Wall Street pays for them. But Madison Avenue speaks on it, meaning Madison Avenue is the loudspeaker. Madison Avenue. So when you think about government, you have Wall Street, financials, then you have advertising. Think about those three industries. Like they're fucking impossible to get into. Like they're incredibly hard to get into. And that's because those are the movers and shakers where the decisions are being made. And at the end of the day, like advertising is an incredibly conservative industry because they are very, 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 very high dollars, right? They're high dollars being moved from company to company, right? The advertiser is the friend with the agency, and you have a lot of big dollars being moving, but they're moving between each other, which is why people like us who are coming, trying to grind and be like, yo, where's my piece? That's where you have a lot of this friction, and you have a lot of, again, think about Washington, think about Wall Street, think about the Black, brown, woman experience in this country with those organics, right? Like it's all connected, right? And like this OGer like dropped that to me and I was like, shit, like that's the realest thing that I've ever, you know what I'm saying, that I've ever heard in my life. But it's very much like that's what it is. You know what I'm saying? And you got people who are like just trying to get paid and just do their jobs and do their thing. There's people, right? Like the awards only show you like, look at the fucking flashy, cool thing, case studies. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, really like people are doing the tried and true. Most clients just want to advertise enough to make enough money. So anyway, so it it's a little bit heady, but I'm giving you like that's this industry. Like it's
No, I appreciate it. I
yeah.
appreciate it. What I like about and I'm going to get to the question in a second, real quick, and we only got like 5 minutes, but I do want to get to some of the questions. What I do like about this generation is that I have seen a willingness to recognize that early and to say, I will not give up myself for whatever this is. I mean, we have several people in this classroom alone that are like, I'll just do my own thing. Like Henry, his question typically this is a little different today, but usually Henry's question is, hey, I want to do my own thing. How do you go about charging people for certain stuff? So like, this generation has been very entrepreneurial, and I think that has been a way to mitigate some of those things. But I do want to ask you a couple questions.
Yeah.
And this one's from Alex, and Alex asks Alex, how did you come up with the public apron slow and low concept? I love it, by the way. And I love that you brought case studies. I'm a sucker for case studies. So just a little bit about the public's apron slow and low concept.
So I am obsessed with Ogilvy. I've been obsessed with Ogilvy since I was 20 years old. And Ogilvy has this lesson to make your thinking funny. Like make your thinking funny. I've always like my low key drive. Like you're like nobody knows this. Like I always call myself Brown Ogilvy. That was my thing. Like I'm all about data intelligence and then fucking up culture with that intelligence, right? Like that's what I'm all about. So basically what happened is the original ask is we need to do a Facebook Live activation, right? So the media led the ask. So then we had a strategist just being a complete just pain in the ass, obsessed with remember when the baby giraffe was happening, where like there was a zoo and a baby giraffe and everyone was like fucking like, oh, it's gonna be born, and like it was born. And it was this like open feed on Facebook Live, and it was a stupid baby giraffe. And the social strategist was like, I just want to test Facebook Live. I don't give a shit what you do. The strategist was like going nowhere, saying, like baby giraffe. But then she did say something very smart. She was like, well, for us, this is chili season, right? So my smart ass goes into my team. I had 2 art directors at the time. I had just built my team. I had 2 ADs. They were both freelancers and a copywriter who was in the process of getting hired. And I looked at my team and I was like, yeah, we should fucking cook chili for 24 hours and call it a day. That's literally like, and it was me on a whiteboard session, just pissed off at like the idiocracy of the room. And we get out of the meeting and it was like, yeah, 24 hours, like that's just so, you know what I mean? Like that would be amazing. And then that would be ridiculous. And that would be ridiculous. Then became into like, could we do this shit for it? So we originally was like, we're not do 24 hours. So we pitched 12 hours. And we're like, yo, 12-hour chili, that's dope, right? Because as you know, like good shit like takes a long time, right? Like you gotta break things down. And chili it's known for taking that longer time. So we went in, we pitched it to like all the directors, we pitched it to all the people, and they were like, 12 hours is scary as hell. We're like, so they're like, how about 4 hours? And we're like, how about 10? How about 8? And then we landed in 8. And the reason that 8 worked was because we did it in a day that was like, oh, so this is a working day, right? So you think about your audience. So you have the working day. So you had this like, you're like fucking around. We know that you're on Facebook at work, right? So you're fucking around on Facebook, kind of doing your thing all day, kind of voting for this key moment, so that when you get out of when you get out of work, I want you to stop by the store. And then one nugget that was incredible about that was we didn't have the budget. And something that this industry doesn't know is like when the idea is big enough, the money shows up. So I pitched, I was like, well, we have all these key moments, and I'm thinking old school TV, I'm thinking radio, right? Like I started looking, I'm all about systems and infrastructure, if you haven't noticed. architecture is what they call it, architecture strategy. By the way, that's a thing. Never heard of it. I was called an architecture strategist last year. And we were like, what if like everything is sponsored, right? Like the items are sponsored. So the peppers were sponsored, the cheese was sponsored. And we got them to throw 10 G's a pop to be able to get in. Like I said, guys, it changed the dynamics of everything. So that, yes, insane, wonderful, like just the most intense thing that I've ever done. And the behind the scenes are even like nuttier. So yeah, hope that helped.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's so true. You know, ideation comes from a lot of different things, and it comes from a lot of different spaces. And I mean, that's one of the things no one sits on Zoom anymore and just like kicks around like thoughts and ideas. And that's been kind of one of the suckier things is like like for me as a strategist, I'm doing a lot of strategy in isolation. And what I've always loved about strategy is like a little piece here, a little piece there. Like, oh, you made me think of this. And then you start planning it out and start driving your research to the direction that you need to go, then start building something great. But like, it's a little harder. And so actually like this is, you know, my student groups are some of the most collaboration I get, either as a student on Monday, Tuesday, when I'm taking classes, or as an instructor on Wednesday, Thursday, when I put all these cool cats in the breakout rooms and I visit them and they give me, I mean, gems that they don't get paid for to give me, but I appreciate them.
Yeah, I love nothing more than a white. Every single one of my case studies, I actually have the photo of the whiteboard where everything started.
Yeah, keep that stuff. Everybody, that's underrated, by the way. You should keep all those things. Like I started this project a year ago, and we're seeking funding this month, and we feel pretty good about it. And I had like the first and we started in the pandemic, so I have like the first screenshot of our Google Hangout. And I have a couple like other recordings and brainstorming sessions and voice memos, and that stuff is so cool to see where your brain was at. But I know we're over time, and normally I'd flex a little bit, but we just have a couple of things I want to get to.
They can what I do. And if you have a question that I didn't answer, again, just look me up, and I'll message you all night.
That's what I wanted to say. I was like, please, please, please. There are some really good questions in here. Please, please, please reach out to Alex in the LinkedIn. Thank you so much, Alex, for being here. You listen, like changing the culture is addicting. That's a gem right there. I mean, there's so many that I've that I wrote down. I just there's a lot. There's a lot.
Thank you all so much.
Everyone, let's thank Alex for being here. Alex, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for doing this. It means a lot to me. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good night. Be good.